Daniel 7. When the future disturbs the present. Daniel was no stranger to dreams and visions. By the time we reach the 7th chapter of the book that bears his name, he has already seen kingdoms rise and fall in symbolic form. He has stood before kings, interpreted mysteries, and watched prophecy unfold with astonishing precision. And yet, what he experiences in Daniel 7 is different. This time, the vision does not come to a pagan monarch, it comes to the prophet himself. And instead of leaving him confident and calm, it leaves him deeply troubled. The chapter opens quietly, almost deceptively so. Daniel tells us that this vision came during the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon. That detail matters. Babylon is still in power. Outwardly, nothing has changed. The golden city still stands, the empire still commands the world, and the future appears secure, at least from a human perspective. But beneath that appearance of stability, God is about to pull back the curtain and show Daniel what lies ahead. Daniel does not see a statue this time. He sees something far more unsettling. He sees the great sea stirred violently by the winds of heaven. In Scripture, the sea often represents nations in turmoil, humanity in unrest, the chaotic movement of history itself. Daniel watches as this sea churns, restless and unstable, until something begins to rise from it. And what emerges is not orderly, not noble, not majestic, but frightening. 4 great beasts come up from the sea, each different from the others. At this point, Daniel is not interpreting. He is only observing. He does not yet know what these creatures represent, and the vision does not pause to explain itself. It simply unfolds before him, one image following another, each more disturbing than the last. The first beast is like a lion with eagle's wings, then a second like a bear raised up on one side, then a third like a leopard with 4 wings and 4 heads, and finally a 4th beast so terrifying, so unlike anything Daniel has ever seen, that he struggles even to describe it. This 4th beast does not resemble any known animal. It is powerful, violent, destructive, it has iron teeth, it crushes and devours. And unlike the others, it does not merely conquer, it tramples what remains. Daniel is watching history in symbolic form, but he does not experience this as an academic exercise. He experiences it as a shock to the soul. We know this because of how he responds. Unlike Daniel 2, where the prophet calmly explains the meaning of the dream, Daniel 7 tells us something deeply personal. I, Daniel, was troubled in spirit, and the visions that passed through my mind disturbed me. He is not detached. He is not merely recording information. He is shaken. This is important. Daniel is not afraid because God has shown him the future. He is afraid because the future he sees involves conflict, oppression, and suffering before restoration comes. The vision reveals that human history is not a smooth upward progression toward peace. It is turbulent. It is violent. It is marked by repeated cycles of power and collapse, and this realization weighs heavily on him. Daniel approaches one of the heavenly attendants in the vision and asks for the meaning of what he has seen. That request alone tells us something crucial about prophecy. God does not expect his servants to understand everything immediately. He invites questions. He welcomes inquiry. Prophecy is not given to confuse, it is given to be understood, step by step, as God provides light. The angel begins with a broad explanation. The 4 great beasts are 4 kings, or kingdoms, that will arise from the earth. This statement connects Daniel 7 directly to Daniel 2. In both chapters, God is revealing the same historical sequence, but from different perspectives. Daniel 2 showed human empires as a statue, impressive, valuable, outwardly glorious. Daniel 7 shows those same empires as beasts, violent, predatory, driven by domination. The contrast is deliberate. From a human point of view, empires are golden, silver, bronze, and iron. From God's point of view, when power is separated from righteousness, it becomes something beastly. This is not political commentary, it is moral evaluation. Division is not condemning governance itself, but the way fallen humanity exercises power when God is excluded. As the angel speaks, Daniel begins to grasp the scope of what he has seen. These kingdoms will arise, rule, and fall. They will dominate the earth for a time, but they will not last forever. This should be comforting, but Daniel is not comforted yet. Something still disturbs him. It is the fourth beast. Daniel tells us explicitly that he was especially concerned about the fourth beast with its iron teeth and crushing strength. He notices details the angel has not yet explained. He sees 10 horns on its head. Then he sees another horn, a small one, emerging among them. This little horn uproots 3 of the others. It has eyes like human eyes. It speaks boastfully. At this point, Daniel's unease deepens. The vision is no longer just about successive kingdoms. It is about something that continues, something aggressive, something that seems to target more than political power. The horn speaks, it asserts itself, it disrupts the balance. And Daniel senses, without yet fully understanding, that this power is different in nature from the others. But before the explanation comes, the vision shifts dramatically. Without warning, the scene moves from the chaos of beasts to the solemnity of a courtroom. Thrones are set in place. The Ancient of Days takes his seat. His clothing is white as snow. His throne is ablaze with fire. Thousands upon thousands attend him. The court sits. The books are opened. This transition is not incidental. It is theological. God is showing Daniel that history does not simply move forward until it collapses under its own weight. There is a moment of judgment, there is a reckoning, there is a divine response to human power, and yet, even here, Daniel is not at peace. Why? Because the judgment scene appears while the fourth beast is still active. The boasting horn is still speaking. The oppressive power has not yet been removed. The tension remains unresolved. Daniel is witnessing the overlap between earthly oppression and heavenly judgment, and he does not yet understand how they connect. That lack of understanding is what troubles him most. Daniel is not disturbed because God is absent. He is disturbed because God is present, and the implications of that presence are vast. If God sees all of this, if God allows these powers to rise, if judgment is real, then history is far more serious than it appears on the surface, and so Daniel listens carefully as the angel continues to explain. Dominion will be taken from them, their authority will be removed, and in contrast to the beastly kingdoms, something entirely different will be given everlasting dominion. One like a son of man comes with the clouds of heaven. He approaches the Ancient of Days. He receives authority, glory, and sovereign power. His kingdom will never be destroyed. This is the turning point of the vision, but not yet its conclusion. For now, Daniel records what he has seen and heard. He tells us honestly that the vision leaves him pale, shaken, and contemplative. He does not rush to conclusions. He does not celebrate prematurely. He carries the weight of the revelation quietly, storing it in his heart. Daniel shows us that prophecy is not given to entertain curiosity or satisfy speculation. It is given to form character, to awaken conscience, and to anchor faith in the midst of uncertainty. The future God reveals is not always comforting at first glance. Sometimes it disturbs us precisely because it forces us to see the world and ourselves more clearly. Daniel 7 begins not with answers but with unease, not with triumph but with tension. And that is intentional. God is preparing His servant and His people for a deeper understanding. Before the explanation of powers, before the focus on the fourth kingdom, before the judgment is fully unpacked, Daniel must first sit with the reality that history is a battleground between human ambition and divine sovereignty. Only then is he ready to understand what comes next. As Daniel continues listening to the explanation of the vision, his attention remains fixed on the fourth beast. Something about it refuses to fade into the background. The first three beasts rise, dominate, and pass on. But this one lingers in his mind. It does not resemble any known creature. It is defined not by form, but by action. It devours, it crushes, it tramples everything underfoot. And Daniel senses, even before the explanation is complete, that this power is different in kind, not merely in degree. The angel confirms what Daniel already feels. This fourth beast represents a kingdom unlike all the others that came before it. Not simply stronger, but fundamentally different in how it exercises authority. This difference echoes what was already revealed in Daniel 2. There, the iron legs of the statue symbolize the power marked by strength, discipline, and dominance, followed by division. Here, the same power is shown again, but from another angle, its character exposed more clearly. History aligns with this description. After Babylon, Medo-Persia, and Greece, Rome alone fits the prophetic pattern. Rome conquered not only through military force, but through systems, law, administration, infrastructure that reshaped the world it ruled. Even after its political unity collapsed, Rome did not vanish, it fractured. Its influence remained, redistributed across the landscape of Europe. Daniel sees this fragmentation symbolized by 10 horns rising from the fourth beast. The angel explains that these horns represent kingdoms that emerge from that empire. Daniel 7:24. Rome does not disappear, it divides. Power does not end, it changes form. The prophetic focus now shifts from a unified empire to a divided world, still carrying Rome's legacy. It is within this divided setting that Daniel notices something new. Another horn begins to rise, small at first, almost unremarkable. It does not appear after the beast is gone, but among the existing horns, Daniel 7:8. This detail is crucial. The power symbolized by the little horn grows out of the Roman world itself. It is not foreign to it. It develops within the same historical framework, drawing authority from what remains after Rome's political collapse. As this little horn rises, 3 of the earlier horns are uprooted, Daniel 7:24. This is not a symbolic flourish, but a concrete marker within the fragmented Roman world. 3 powers, the Heruli, the Vandals, and the Ostrogoths, stood in opposition to the growing religious authority centered in Rome. Their successive removal from the political landscape did not happen by accident. It cleared the way for a new kind of power to consolidate itself, one that did not rule primarily through armies, but through spiritual claims and ecclesiastical authority. In this way, the prophecy describes not a sudden conquest, but a gradual reordering of influence that allowed the little horn to establish its place among the kingdoms of the West. What troubles Daniel most is not only how this power rises, but how it speaks and sees. The little horn has eyes like human eyes and a mouth that speaks great words. Daniel 7:8. The imagery shifts. This is no longer brute force alone. Eyes suggest awareness, strategy, calculation. A mouth suggests authority expressed through claims, teachings, and decrees. This power shapes loyalty and conscience. It persuades, it defines, it asserts. The angel explains that this power speaks against the Most High and oppresses God's people, Daniel 7:25. At this point, the vision moves decisively beyond politics. The conflict is no longer about territory, it is about allegiance. Authority is no longer measured only by borders, but by claims over worship and obedience. Then comes the defining line. He will think to change the times and the law, Daniel 7:25. This is not ordinary legislation. Civil governments change civil codes, but changing sacred time and divine law belongs to God alone. This statement reveals the heart of the issue. The little horn assumes spiritual authority over what God Himself has established. Scripture defines God's law clearly. The 10 Commandments are spoken by God and written by His own finger, Exodus 20. Among them, the 4th commandment identifies sacred time. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. The 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God, Exodus 28:11. This commandment is unique. It points directly to God as Creator and identifies a specific day He set apart. The shift from the 7-day Sabbath to Sunday observance did not come from a command of Christ or the apostles. It developed through papal ecclesiastical authority and tradition. This change stands as a concrete historical example of what Daniel describes, an attempt to redefine sacred time through human authority. It is not presented as accidental. It is presented as intentional, an expression of assumed jurisdiction over divine arrangements. The same pattern appears in the treatment of God's law itself. While Scripture preserves the commandments unchanged, tradition restructured their presentation. The commandment forbidding images was minimized, while the Sabbath commandment was divided to preserve the number 10. Again, the issue is not arithmetic, it is authority. Who has the right to define what God has spoken? The angel also tells Daniel that this power would endure for a defined period, a time, times, and half a time. Scripture interprets its own symbols. This same period appears elsewhere as 1,260 days. Revelation 12:6, and again as a time, times, and half a time, Revelation 12:14. The consistency confirms that these expressions describe the same span. The Bible establishes the day for a year principle in prophetic context. God tells Israel, I have assigned you a day for each year, Ezekiel 4:6. He says again, for each day a year, Numbers 14:34. Applying this principle, the 1,260 prophetic days represent 1,260 literal years. The prophecy is describing not a brief episode, but a long historical era. The beginning of this period follows the conditions already given in the vision, after Rome's division and after opposing powers are removed. Historically, this aligns with the year AD 538, when ecclesiastical authority in Rome moved into a new phase of influence, no longer merely spiritual, but deeply intertwined with civil power. From that point forward, religious authority increasingly shaped law, doctrine, and conscience across Europe. If the prophecy marks a beginning, it also marks an end. Counting 1,260 years from AD 538. In that year, during the upheaval of the French Revolution, the Pope was taken captive and papal political authority was stripped away. The power that had dominated for centuries and oppressed and killed so many true Christians suffered a decisive interruption. Daniel describes this moment simply. The dominion of the little horn is taken away. Daniel 7:26. Authority is removed. Powers curtailed. Throughout this long period, the influence of the little horn extended beyond calendar and law into the question of salvation itself. During the medieval era, the Church taught that forgiveness and grace were mediated through ecclesiastical systems. Practices such as indulgences promoted the idea that forgiveness or reduction of punishment could be obtained through prescribed acts or payments authorized by the papal system. This placed institutional authority between the believer and God, shaping how people understood salvation and access to grace. All these elements converge into a single profile, a power that rises from the Roman world, that grows among divided kingdoms, that removes opposition as it consolidates authority, that speaks great claims, that reaches into sacred time and divine law, that endures for a long prophetic period, that suffers a historical wound, and that exercises spiritual authority over conscience. Daniel 7 lingers here because the issue is not merely who rules the world, but who defines truth, worship, and obedience. The prophecy is not preserved to inflame hostility, but to expose the nature of authority when it steps beyond its bounds and claims what belongs to God. As Daniel continues watching the vision unfold, something remarkable happens. While the little horn is still speaking, still exerting influence, still pressing its claims, the scene suddenly shifts. Without warning, Daniel's attention is lifted away from the chaos of the earth and directed toward heaven itself. Thrones are set in place, the Ancient of Days takes his seat. Books are opened, Daniel 7, 9, 10. This transition is deliberate. It tells us something essential about how God relates to history. The judgment does not wait for human powers to collapse. It does not begin only after oppression has ended. It begins while earthly authority still appears strong. Heaven is not reacting late. Heaven is already in session. For Daniel, this shift is unsettling and comforting at the same time. Unsettling because the vision has revealed how deeply religious authority can be distorted when it separates itself from God. Comforting because it now becomes clear that nothing has gone unnoticed. Every claim, every decree, every pressure placed on conscience, all of it is seen. The image of the Ancient of Days is meant to slow us down. His clothing is white as snow. His hair is white like pure wool. Fire flows from his throne, Daniel 7, 9, 10. This is not the picture of a hurried judge or an anxious ruler. It is the image of moral clarity, stability, and purity. God is not scrambling to regain control. He already has it. The books being opened tell us something else. History is not random. Suffering is not invisible. Faithfulness is not forgotten. The judgment scene affirms that God's response to abuse of authority is not indifference, but evaluation. And then Daniel hears something that reframes the entire vision. Judgment was given in favor of the saints of the Most High. Daniel 7:22. This line changes everything. The judgment is not portrayed as a threat to God's people. It is presented as their vindication. It is not against them, it is for them. In a world where religious power has pressured, silenced, and misrepresented faith, the heavenly court becomes the place where truth is finally restored. That distinction matters deeply, especially for those who have lived under spiritual pressure. Daniel 7 acknowledges that God's people are not always protected from suffering in history. They are sometimes worn down, sometimes misunderstood, sometimes marginalized, but the vision insists that none of this is permanent. Heaven sees what earth distorts. The judgment scene also answers a question that has been building since the rise of the little horn. What happens when religious authority claims what belongs to God? Daniel 7 does not leave that unanswered. The dominion of the little horn is taken away, Daniel 7:26. Authority that overreaches does not endure. Power that redefines divine law does not last forever. But the vision does not end with the removal of false authority. It moves toward restoration. Daniel now sees one like a son of man coming with the clouds of heaven. Daniel 7:13. This figure is not described as a beast. That contrast is intentional. Beasts represent kingdoms built on coercion and domination. The Son of Man represents a kingdom rooted in righteousness and relationship. He approaches the Ancient of Days and receives authority, glory, and sovereign power, Daniel 7:14. This moment is central. Authority is transferred, but not to another empire, not to another beast. It is given to the Son of Man. And then, remarkably, the vision expands that gift. The sovereignty, power, and greatness of all the kingdoms under heaven will be handed over to the saints, the people of the Most High, Daniel 7:27. That is how Daniel 7 resolves the tension it has built from the beginning. What started with beast ends with people. What began with domination ends with shared authority. What began with coercion ends with belonging. This is why the judgment matters. It is not simply a courtroom scene. It is the turning point between oppressive authority and restored order. It marks the moment when God publicly affirms that no power claiming divine prerogatives can stand unexamined. And it assures the faithful that allegiance to God, even when costly, is never misplaced. For those listening today, this part of the vision speaks quietly but powerfully. Many people carry spiritual wounds, not always from atheism or persecution, but from religious systems that demanded loyalty without humility, obedience without grace, and conformity without compassion. Daniel 7 does not deny that such systems exist. It exposes them, and it promises that they do not have the final word. The judgment scene tells us that God distinguishes between faith and control, between obedience and coercion, between devotion and domination. He does not confuse his voice with human authority that speaks in his name without his character. And then comes the assurance that steadies the heart. The kingdom that replaces all others is eternal. It does not rise by overthrowing consciences. It does not demand allegiance through fear. It is given, not seized. It endures, not because it suppresses, but because it restores. For Daniel, this vision explains the long arc of history. For us, it speaks into the present. We live in a world still shaped by inherited traditions, institutional pressures, and competing claims of authority. Daniel 7 invites us to ask a simple but searching question: where does ultimate authority belong? The answer the vision gives is consistent from beginning to end. Authority belongs to God. It is exercised through Christ, and it is shared with those who remain faithful to Him. If history is moving toward a kingdom that cannot be shaken, where does my loyalty rest today?